Hey friends, welcome back to She's At It Again. I and my helpers, there's Lacey and there's Zoe, we're going to be in the kitchen for a bit. I'm going to show you how to make a oatmeal chocolate loaf, and this is more like a breakfast food, but we actually eat it for dessert. Don't expect it to be super sweet, but you do want to use really, really overripe bananas. That's where the sweetness is going to come from. You're going to be pleasantly surprised at how filling this is and how much people enjoy it when you serve it to them. Don't even blow it by saying, hey, there's no sugar in it. I get made fun of a lot for saying, and there's no sugar in this, and it's still really good. So go with us as we make a chocolate oatmeal loaf, and I think you're going to like this. So let's go. All right, the first thing we're going to do is put 1 1/4 cups of whole oats in there. These are just rolled oats. These are organic. I'm going to put those in a bowl. And we've heated up our milk to a simmer. We're just going to pour this over the top. We're going to let this sit in here for about 10 minutes so the oatmeal will be nice and soft. Just give that a stir. And we'll be right back. Okay. Our oatmeal has been sitting in this hot milk for a while. We're just going to set this aside. I have the oven preheated to 360 degrees, and we want to prepare a loaf pan. I'm using a glass loaf pan. You can use a metal one if you want. I prefer the shiny kind, but I just kind of got away from using metal ones a few years back. I just bought several glass ones, and they work great. I'm going to take a little piece of butter and just rub it around in this so it won't stick to the pan. I have to be honest with you, I found this recipe last week, and this is the 3rd time I've made it. I started to film it the first time, and I thought, nah, it may not be that good. I'll just wait and see, and we loved it. The first time I made it with cocoa. The second time I made it, we had lunch guests over after church on Sunday. I made it with carob, and it was equally good. There's no difference detected at all on my part, and my husband's either, but everybody else liked it. We had 2 teenage boys there, and they mopped it up like there was no tomorrow. You'd have thought it was a plate with brownies and ice cream on it, so they did great. And by the way, this is gluten-free. Just make sure you have gluten-free oats. If you have someone with a situation where their health could be compromised, if it has to have if it happens to have gluten in it, make sure your oats are particularly certified gluten-free. So we have butter on our pan. We're just going to set that aside. This recipe calls for a tablespoon of baking powder, but I'll tell you a little secret. If you don't have baking powder, you can use a tablespoon of buttermilk and about 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. Put that together, and that's your replacement for baking powder. All right, let me get my recipe over here. In this bowl, I have 2 overripe bananas, and when I say overripe, they had gotten overripe. I put them in the freezer, and then I set them out to thaw before I started ironing early this morning, so they are quite overripe, and overripe just equals super sweet. Instead of just a regular banana, it is like a banana with a whole lot of sugars in it. Only they're not processed sugars. So stir your banana up a bit. And to this, we're going to add 2 eggs. I'm going to put these in a different container before I drop them in that. Every once in a while, I get a shell in it. And this egg actually has straw all over it and chicken poop, so we'll make sure. Every once in a while, there's a little speck of something in there. Sometimes I can get it out, and sometimes I can't. I got that out, though. That's just part of chicken grossness. But these come from very happy chickens, and very healthy chickens. So I'm not concerned at all about compromising anything with these eggs. Okay, 2 eggs going in there. Gonna beat that up. And I'm just using a fork. About a half a teaspoon of vanilla. And this is my homemade vanilla, and I know about how many of these little droppers it takes to make a half a teaspoon. Half teaspoon of vanilla. To that, we're going to add a fourth of a cup of cocoa. And again, if you have someone who has a cocoa allergy or you just rather stay away from the caffeine, feel free to use carob powder because it works beautifully in this. We'll need a fourth of a teaspoon of salt, and this is just pink Himalayan salt. I'll grab my little tiny spoon up here. And we're going to add our buttermilk and baking soda. When you put that together, it gets a little bubbly, and that's what it's for. That's going to be our rising agent. As much as this can rise. It doesn't rise a whole lot, but it does a little bit. All right, we'll get our bowl of oats back over here. Try to get the cocoa off the fork. And we'll just combine all our ingredients there. This reminds me a little of like a chocolate granola bar because it has the oatmeal in it. And like I said, it's not just super sweet. It really depends on the ripeness of your bananas. But for those of you who don't believe me and you want to put in a partially green banana, you're going to think I've lost my mind and going, where is the sweetness? I thought there'd be something sweet in it. It's not going to taste that sweet, but if you use a really good overripe banana, it's a beautiful sweetness. Again, that's your only source of sugar in this recipe is the banana. So I'll give this a stir. You're not really going to over mix it because there's no flour in it, there's no gluten, and it's not going to compromise the texture of it at all. Zoe. Lacey saw the cameras go on and she had enough. She went out in the sunroom. But Zoe has to stand here and make her nest on her coolaroo. Okay, looking over my recipe, make sure I have everything in here. The oats, the hot milk, the overripe bananas, the eggs, vanilla, cocoa, salt, the soda and buttermilk, which replaces the baking powder. And we're going to put this in our buttered loaf pan. And the last thing we're going to add to this before we bake it is about 1/3 of a cup of, these are English walnut pieces, and I've just crushed them up to about that size. We're just going to sprinkle over the top. And the reason we don't mix these into the batter is kind of like when you're making brownies. You don't put those in the batter because it just gets steamed and they're soft. But if you leave them on the top, they toast while they're baking, and it's just a lot better consistency. Now we'll make a little bit of a glaze to put on this after a while once it comes out of the oven. So we'll come back and you can see that part of it. That adds a little bit of sweetness to it. So the topping is completely optional. I didn't make it on the last one. Nobody missed it because they didn't even know it was supposed to be there. But I had it on the first one, and I think it adds a good flavor to it, but it's not a must. Okay, again, the oven is at 360 degrees. We're going to pop this in and bake it. For 40 minutes. So we'll come back when that's done and let you take a look at it. Okay, here is our chocolate oat loaf. I forgot what I named it. Oh, I don't even remember what it was called on the recipe that I saw. Okay, here's what it looks like, just fresh out of the oven. We're still going to make a glaze to go on the top, just kind of a drizzle, but I just wanted to show it to you what it looks like when it was fresh taken out of the oven. It's still hot right now, so we're going to let this cool down all the way. But as you can see, it's perfectly fine for serving like this. I served it like this on Sunday, but anyway, we'll be back in just a minute and make the chocolate drizzle for the top. All right, our loaf is baked and it's completely cooled. It's probably close to 2 hours after it finished. So here's what we're going to do now. Small saucepan, and again, this is just completely optional. You don't have to have a glaze on top, but who doesn't like a little extra chocolate flavor? So in this little pan, after I make a mess and clean it up, I'm going to put about a tablespoon. I didn't measure this either time when I made this before, or the first time I made it, so I'm just kind of eyeballing it. And I would say 2 big pinches of salt. So a tablespoon of cocoa, 2 pinches of salt, and I have honey here. Let's start with about a teaspoon. And this burner's not on very high at all. I'm going to put milk in this to smooth this out. We're looking at about a teaspoon of milk. If you're using carob powder for this, it will be sweeter than obviously the cocoa will. Cocoa has a very bitter taste to it when you taste it by itself. Carob does not. It was such a shock the first time I tasted it. I expected the bitterness of the unsweetened cocoa, and it wasn't at all. It was actually pretty pleasant. It's not super sweet, like you wouldn't need any sweetener to it at all, but it is not anything like the bitterness of cocoa. But this is cocoa I'm using on this one this time, just for demonstration's sake. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit more honey. So about 2 teaspoons of honey. And I think that's enough milk for that. And I'm going to taste this just to see if that's sweet enough. Let's see. That tastes like really dark chocolate. So we might add just a touch more honey to it. And don't turn your burner up too high and scorch it. You don't want that scorched taste to it. I just want the burner on because I want the honey to be nice and liquidy. All right, taste it again. Yeah, that's nice and sweet. Basically tastes like melted chocolate chips. Without the processed sugar, of course. Okay, I'm going to turn the burner off and we're going to go over and put this on our cake. All right, now if you wanted to serve it straight out of this, if you're taking it someplace and you need to just basically transport it. It's easy enough to leave it in this and serve it out of this. It's fine. I actually did that one of the times. But if you want to put it on a serving platter, tip it over. And do it just like that. And that's why we put butter in the pan, so it would release. Put our rogue walnuts back on there that are trying to escape. Okay, I just want to make sure you can see this. And there's such a glare on the countertop. That's why I'm putting this hot pad here, just to cut the glare down. All right, so we're going to take our chocolate and basically just drizzle it on there. Okay. And this is our, what are we calling it here? I actually prefaced it with gluten-free, sugar-free. So processed sugar-free. This is a chocolate oat loaf, and it's sweetened just with bananas. But isn't that pretty? Okay, recipe's in the description. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to sharing something again with you real soon. Bye, guys.